I woke up and my brand new car was gone. I called my parents panicking. Mom laughed. "We gave your spare key to Felicity. She needed a reliable car. She had messed up cars before." So I just said, "Okay, just give me a minute," and called the police. The cold October air was sharp, biting at my cheeks as I stood in the empty space. It was 7:30 in the morning, and the parking lot of my Columbus apartment complex was just beginning to buzz with the sounds of people starting their routines. The concrete was still damp from the morning dew, and I could see the faint, careless tire tracks where someone had backed out quickly. 12 hours ago, that space had been occupied by my 3-month-old Honda Accord, silver, pristine, and the most expensive thing I had ever owned. Now, there was just an outline and a sudden, terrifying void in my stomach. That car was not just a vehicle, it was an achievement. It was the physical manifestation of 2 years of working 2 jobs through college, years of meticulous savings, and a down payment that had almost wiped out my emergency fund. It represented everything I had built for myself, brick by careful brick, in contrast to the unpredictable chaos that defined my childhood. I had always been the responsible one, the controlled one, determined to build a life where I never had to rely on anyone, especially my family. My mother's voice still echoed in my ears, thin and brittle through the phone line. That dismissive chuckle she used when she thought I was being hysterical. "Jasmine, relax. It is with family." As if the word family were a magic password that negated theft, negligence, and the concept of personal property. Felicity. Of course it was Felicity. My older sister. The one who had crashed 4 cars in the last 5 years. The one who had totaled our father's truck running a red light because she was changing the radio station. Felicity, who demolished everything in her path and simply expected someone else, my parents, a rich ex-husband, or me, to clean up the rubble. My hands were shaking as I gripped the phone, scrolling through my contacts past my mother, past my father, past Felicity. I needed to breathe, to find the core of cold, clear logic I knew was buried beneath the panic. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel the pulse in my throat. I had been making payments on that $28,000 vehicle for 3 months. It was in my name, and I was financially liable for every mile it drove and every dent it acquired. "She is your sister," my mother had said, as if that explained the violation of my home, my trust, and my legal rights. Family helps family. You know, Felicity has been going through a hard time since her divorce. She needed transportation to get to her new job. And you have that nice new car just sitting there. The words "just sitting there" were what broke through my shock and lodged deep in my chest like a shard of ice. They had come to my apartment complex in the middle of the night, around 11 o'clock, my mother admitted, and handed over my spare key without even a knock, assuming that my possessions were community property to be dispensed according to Felicity's needs. For 29 years, I had believed the great lie that if I were capable, independent, and silent about my own needs, I would finally earn a love that was not conditional. Standing there in the damp, empty space, staring at the tire tracks that marked my betrayal, I felt that lie shatter. A wall I had spent 29 years building had cracked, and through that crack, cold clarity flowed. They did not respect me. They only respected the chaos they could clean up. I opened the police department app on my phone, navigated past the general information, and selected the non-emergency contact number. My voice, when I finally spoke into the phone, was quiet but steady. The woman on the other end, a dispatcher named Theresa, asked me to confirm the location and the nature of the emergency. "I need to report a stolen vehicle," I said, "and I need an officer to meet me at my residence immediately." "Can you describe the circumstances of the theft, ma'am?" she asked. I took a deep breath, the cold air burning my lungs. The car was taken without my consent. The person who took it is my sister. The keys were given to her by my parents who do not own the vehicle. "I want to press charges." There was a slight pause on the line. "An officer will be there in approximately 20 minutes, ma'am. Please remain near your location." I hung up, deleting the voicemails my mother had already left, the ones laced with guilt and passive aggression. I looked at the empty spot one last time. It was a space I needed to fill, not with a car, but with a boundary. I was done waiting for permission to put myself first. The fight had started, and this time, I was fighting for me. The police were coming. The 20 minutes the dispatcher had promised stretched into what felt like an hour, amplifying the dread in the empty parking lot. My parents' calls continued, vibrating the phone in my hand. First my mother, then my father, then my mother again. I silenced them all, letting the sounds of the morning traffic rush past me, using the noise as a shield against the familiar tidal pull of their guilt and manipulation. I had made a choice, and the hardest part of that choice was not the action itself, but the stillness required to hold the line against their predictable emotional onslaught. When Officer Bradley finally arrived, the sight of the squad car pulling into the complex felt less like rescue and more like a declaration of war. She was a woman close to my age, with dark, kind eyes and a uniform that projected an immediate, competent calm. She approached me holding a notepad, her expression professional, neither judgmental nor overly sympathetic. This was exactly the kind of neutral authority I needed. "Jasmine, correct?" she asked, her voice low and even. "I am Officer Bradley. Dispatch said you wanted to report a vehicle theft taken by a family member." I nodded, feeling my voice catch slightly. "That's correct. My sister, Felicity, took my Honda Accord sometime last night. My parents gave her the spare key." Officer Bradley listened with the patience of someone who had heard 100 variations of domestic catastrophe. She asked precise questions, keeping the narrative strictly focused on the facts of property and consent. "And you are the sole owner of this vehicle? Your name is on the title and registration, not anyone else's?" "Yes," I confirmed. "I bought it 3 months ago. I have all the paperwork inside my apartment." She jotted something down. "And you did not give anyone permission to take your car? Not your parents, not your sister, not anyone?" "No. I did not even know it was gone until I walked outside this morning to go to work. I thought it had been stolen by a stranger. I never imagined my own family would do something like this." The last sentence felt raw, an involuntary concession to the years of suppressed hurt. Officer Bradley made another note, then looked up, her expression serious. "I have to ask you this directly, and I need you to think carefully before you answer. Are you certain you want to file a report? Once this is in the system, it is in the system. Your sister will be flagged for vehicle theft, and that is not something that can be easily undone." I thought about the 4 wrecks in 5 years. I thought about the thousands of dollars I had saved for the down payment. I thought about my mother's voice hardening on the phone, accusing me of being jealous. I thought about the core lie of my life, that if I stayed quiet I would be safe. "I am certain," I replied. The words were not an act of anger, but of cold, quiet conviction. Officer Bradley nodded and began filling out the official report, her pen scratching against the pad. As she worked, my phone vibrated again, not with a call, but with a text message. It was from Felicity, the first communication I had received from her in months. It read, "Heard you are freaking out about the car. Chill out. I am just borrowing it for the week. I will bring it back on Sunday. Stop being so dramatic." I held the screen out to Officer Bradley. She paused her writing and raised one eyebrow as she read the message. "She texted you admitting she has the car." The officer noted. "Apparently, she thinks this is just a misunderstanding. She thinks I am overreacting." I confirmed, a flicker of dark humor rising. "Well," Officer Bradley said, taking a quick photo of my screen with her own phone, "this will make things easier from an evidentiary standpoint. I am going to enter this into the system now. Your vehicle will be flagged as stolen, and any officer who runs the plates will be alerted immediately. If your sister is driving it, she will be stopped." As she spoke the words "flagged as stolen," a familiar sick feeling began to curl in my stomach. This was the anxiety I always felt when I crossed my family, that heavy, internal pressure that warned me I was about to cause trouble. But this time it was different. Beneath the dread, there was a strange, powerful sensation that felt almost like relief, like the release of a heavy bag I had been carrying for miles without realizing how much it weighed. The decision was no longer mine to reverse. The mechanism of accountability was turning. I imagined my sister, driving around unaware that her entitlement had just crossed a legal line that her parents could not erase. It was a sobering thought, but one that left me feeling anchored for the first time that day. I handed Officer Bradley the title and registration paperwork I had retrieved. Now the waiting began. I had traded the immediate panic of a lost car for the long, slow, grinding dread of a legal conflict. I was determined to face it. I went to work. I had to. Being an operations manager at Crestwell Electric meant keeping the entire East Side supply chain flowing, and my absence, even for a family-induced crisis, would only generate more chaos I would have to clean up later. Walking into the office felt like stepping onto a different planet, one governed by logic, metrics, and fair compensation. A welcome respite from the warped reality of my apartment complex. My coworker, Denise, noticed the change immediately. Denise was a practical woman who understood boundaries because she respected them. She walked over to my desk, set down a large paper cup of black coffee without asking, and leaned in. "You look like someone ran over your dog," she said, her voice low. "What happened?" "Family drama," I replied, staring at my inventory reports. "I don't want to talk about it yet." She simply nodded and gave my shoulder a sympathetic squeeze, returning to her own desk. That small, unconditional gesture of kindness, the coffee, the space, was more support than my actual parents had offered me in 29 years. Denise understood that sometimes processing required silence. My family had never understood that about me. The silence did not last. Around 11 o'clock, my phone rang again. It was Felicity calling directly. After a moment of hesitation, I answered, deciding it was time for the final, necessary confrontation. I needed her to understand that the consequence was real, not an empty threat. "Jasmine, what the hell is wrong with you?" My sister's voice was sharp with annoyance, carrying the same entitled tone she used whenever anyone dared to inconvenience her. "Mom said you were acting crazy about the car. It is just a car. I needed it for work, and you were not using it in the middle of the night. You took my car without asking me, Felicity," I stated, keeping my own voice even and professional, like I was discussing a supply chain error. "You did not call. You did not text. You just took it." "I did ask," she retorted, sounding genuinely confused. "I asked Mom and Dad, and they said it would be fine. They said you would understand because you are always so understanding about everything." There was the core of the problem laid bare. I was the reliable resource, the one whose personal property and autonomy were always assumed to be negotiable. "They do not own my car, Felicity," I corrected her. "They cannot give permission for something that is not theirs to give." "God, you are so uptight," she spat, escalating the attack. "This is exactly why nobody likes you. You know that. You are always so obsessed with rules and fairness and making sure everything is exactly right. Meanwhile, I am actually trying to get my life together, and you cannot even let me borrow a stupid car for 1 week." I closed my eyes, absorbing the words. Nobody likes you. It was the familiar, ancient wound, the one she knew how to strike. But this time the wound felt numb, cauterized by the violation she had just committed. "Felicity, where are you right now?" I asked. "None of your business. I will bring the car back when I am ready and not a minute before." This was the moment of truth. I pushed back, calm and surgical. "That car is currently registered as stolen with the Columbus Police Department. If you are driving it and you get pulled over for any reason, a broken taillight, a lane change, you will be arrested on the spot." There was a noticeable pause on the line. Then, she laughed. It was that same high, dismissive sound my mother always made, a sound bred from decades of consequence-free living. "You are bluffing. You would never actually call the cops on your own sister. You do not have the guts." "I already did," I confirmed. "The officer filed the report this morning. She is standing right next to me as we speak." I could almost hear the gears turning in her head, the chaotic calculation of whether this time, finally, I was telling the truth. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Then her voice returned, harder and uglier than before. "You are such a Jasmine. You know that you have always been jealous of me, and now you are trying to ruin my life because I finally have a chance at something good. You cannot stand to see me succeed." "I am trying to get my car back," I replied, the truth simple and undeniable. "That is all I want. This is not about the car and you know it. This is about you wanting to control everything. You cannot stand that Mom and Dad love me more than you. You have always resented that." I felt the words try to burrow into the soft, festering places of old abandonment, but they met resistance. Something had fundamentally shifted when I saw that empty parking space. "Felicity, I do not care if Mom and Dad love you more. I stopped caring about that years ago. I care that you stole my car. I did not steal it. They gave me the key. A key they had no right to give. I finished. Look, I do not want to argue with you about semantics. Just bring the car back to my apartment, and we can sort this out without police involvement. No, I need it for work. You can take the bus or get a ride or something. Figure it out. I took a slow, deep breath, stabilizing my voice one last time. All right then, I will see you when the police find you. I hung up before she could respond, blocking her number immediately afterward. The finality of the action was immense. I had not just ended a phone call. I had severed the last, thin, pathetic wire that connected me to my sister's drama. I looked down at the cold coffee Denise had brought me and felt a grim, quiet satisfaction. The battle had escalated, but for the first time in my life, I was fighting on the right side of the law and standing on the solid ground of my own worth. 4 hours later, the call came. I was sitting at my desk at Crestwell Electric, trying to focus on inventory reports, but the numbers on the screen were meaningless. My phone had remained silent since I blocked Felicity, and the stillness felt loud. When Officer Bradley's number flashed on the screen, I stood up so fast I knocked over my coffee cup, sending lukewarm liquid spreading across my meticulously organized desk. I ignored the mess. This was the moment of consequences. Jasmine, this is Officer Bradley. We found your vehicle. Where is it? Is Felicity with it? I demanded, the questions rushing out, fueled by a mixture of anxiety and grim curiosity. There was a noticeable pause, brief but telling. The car is at an impound lot on the west side of the city. It was abandoned in a no-parking zone about 3 hours ago. Looks like your sister ditched it when she realized we were actively looking for it. What condition is it in? I asked, dread coiling in my stomach. The chaos that defined Felicity's life always left a physical residue. You should probably come see it yourself, Officer Bradley suggested gently. I can meet you there in about an hour if that works. I told my supervisor I had a family emergency, which was technically the understatement of the decade. I borrowed Denise's car, thankful for her unquestioning support, and drove across town to the impound lot. Officer Bradley was already there, standing next to what had once been my pristine, 3-month-old Honda Accord. The sight stopped me dead in the gravel lot. The front bumper was visibly dented and scraped, the damage consistent with someone rear-ending another vehicle at low speed and simply driving away. The driver's side mirror was cracked almost in half, hanging at a defeated, awkward angle. Long, jagged scratches ran along the passenger door, looking deliberate, like someone had keyed the paint. And the back window had a spider web of damage, a huge crack running diagonally from corner to corner. The whole car looked violated, branded permanently with my sister's carelessness. What happened? I heard myself ask, my voice sounding far away and disconnected from my body. Hard to say for certain without more investigation, Officer Bradley said, walking me around the ruin. The damage to the bumper is consistent with a minor collision. The scratches could be vandalism or a tight parking situation. As for the window, your guess is as good as mine. We found fast food wrappers all over the interior too. And there is some kind of stain on the back seat that I would strongly recommend having professionally cleaned. I walked around the car slowly, cataloging every scrape. I had washed this car every weekend. I had treated it with care because it represented years of saving and sacrifice. Now it looked like a recovery from a demolition derby. My phone rang. It was my mother's number, calling from my father's phone. I answered it this time, not because I was willing to reconcile, but because I wanted her to hear the truth of the wreckage she had enabled. Jasmine. Felicity just called me crying hysterically. She said the police are after her because you filed some kind of report. Please tell me this is all a big misunderstanding. Her voice was tight with the kind of controlled anger she used when she was trying to avoid exploding. It is not a misunderstanding, Mom. She stole my car, I said, my voice dangerously level. She took it without my permission, drove it for less than 24 hours, and already damaged it severely. I am standing in an impound lot right now looking at the wreck she made of my brand new car. The bumper is dented. The mirror is cracked. The back window has a huge crack in it, and the interior looks like a garbage dump. Damaged it. What do you mean damaged? Felicity did not mention anything about damage. Of course she did not. When has Felicity ever taken responsibility for anything she has done? I shot back. She probably did not even notice she hit something. She was probably on her phone or putting on makeup instead of watching the road. My mother was silent for a long moment, then her voice shifted, taking on the familiar manipulative, guilt-inducing tone. Well, even if there was some minor damage, it was probably an accident. You know, Felicity has always had bad luck with cars. That does not mean she deserves to be treated like a criminal by her own sister. A bad luck. The lie was infuriating. Bad luck, Mom. She has destroyed 4 vehicles in 5 years. That is not luck. That is a pattern of reckless behavior that you and Dad have enabled every single time by paying her legal fees and buying her new cars and making excuses for her. The dam broke. Years of carefully suppressed resentment surged out, unfiltered and raw. We did what any good parents would do. We supported our daughter when she was struggling. She cried. And what about me? When did you ever support me the way you support her? When I was working 2 jobs to pay for college while Felicity dropped out, and you paid for her apartment. When I was saving every penny for years to buy this car, while you bought Felicity 3 different vehicles that she wrecked. The questions were rhetorical, but I needed to ask them. When did you ever support me? You never needed help, Jasmine. You were always so capable, so independent. Felicity needed more support because she struggled more. That is just the reality of having children with different needs. Different needs or different standards. I challenged, staring at the shattered glass of the back window. Because from where I am standing, it looks like you held me to a higher standard my entire life, while letting Felicity get away with murder. And the proof is that you thought it was perfectly acceptable to give away my car in the middle of the night without even asking me. My mother gasped. How dare you speak to me that way after everything we have done for you? What exactly have you done for me, Mom? I asked, my voice finally becoming steady and perfectly calm. The only thing you have ever done for me is criticize me for not being more understanding of my sister's problems. There was a long silence. I think you need to take some time and reflect on what you are doing to this family. I think you need to do the same, I countered. I hung up and, without hesitation, blocked my father's number 2. I looked at my ruined car and realized the family had not just been broken, it had been toxic for years. I had only been pretending otherwise. The fight was no longer just about the car. It was about finally holding the line for my own self-respect. I retrieved the car from the impound lot, paying the necessary fees myself. It was another expense I could not afford but could not avoid, another financial casualty in the war for my own boundaries. The day after I got the wreck back to my apartment complex, the insurance adjuster arrived. He was a middle-aged man named Gerald, carrying a clipboard and a sympathetic expression that suggested he had seen far too much family-inflicted chaos. So, this was a theft by a family member? Gerald asked, making notes on his form. My sister. I confirmed, handing him the police report. She took the spare key from my parents and drove off with it in the middle of the night without my knowledge or consent. And yes, I filed a police report documenting the theft. Gerald nodded and began his meticulous inspection, crouching down to examine the dented front bumper. This dent is pretty significant. Looks like she hit something at a decent speed and kept driving. The paint transfer here suggests it was another vehicle, probably a darker color. She did not mention hitting anything to my mother. I muttered. That happens more often than you would think. Gerald replied wryly. He moved around to the side of the car, running his fingers along the jagged, linear scratches on the passenger door. These look deliberate. See how they are all the same depth and angle. Someone keyed this car. A sick, cold feeling settled in my stomach. Keyed it. The idea that Felicity might have deliberately damaged my property out of spite, or that someone she angered might have done it, was almost too much to process. It escalated the violation from careless recklessness to calculated malice. Gerald moved to the back, examining the cracked window. This is interesting. See how the crack radiates from this point here. Something hit the window from the inside, not the outside, like someone threw something against it from the back seat. From the inside, that detail was worse than the keying. It implied either a violent accident or a fit of rage inside my new car. He spent another 20 minutes documenting everything, taking photos and making notes. When he was finished, he turned to me with an expression that was almost hopeful. "Here is the good news," he said. "Your comprehensive coverage should handle most of this. Given that you have a police report documenting the theft, we can process this as a stolen vehicle recovery claim." What does that mean exactly? It means we will cover the repairs minus your deductible. Given the extent of the damage, multiple systems impacted, interior, exterior, you might even qualify for a total loss payout if the repair costs exceed a certain percentage of the vehicle's current value. This is a fairly new vehicle with significant, varied damage. It is definitely possible. A total loss. They would pay me the market value for the entire car. It was an unexpected pivot, a loophole of bitter fortune. The destruction Felicity wrought might, ironically, free me completely from the debt and the contaminated object. How long will that take? I asked, a small flicker of hope rising for the first time since I discovered the empty space. "I should have an answer for you within a week," he promised. After Gerald left, I sat down at my kitchen table, waiting for the inevitable emotional shrapnel. I had blocked my parents, but Felicity found a way around my defenses, through voicemail from unknown numbers. I played the first message. Felicity's voice filled the room, slurred and angry, sounding like she had been drinking. "So, you actually did it. You actually called the cops on your own sister. I hope you are happy now. You selfish brat. Mom and Dad are devastated. They cannot believe you would do this to the family. You always cared more about things than people, Jasmine. That is why you are going to die alone. Nobody wants to be with someone as cold as you." I saved the voicemail immediately. Officer Bradley had told me to document everything, and this was pure, unadulterated evidence of her spite and her refusal to take responsibility. I deleted the second message, a plaintive, disappointed message from my father asking me to drop the charges and apologize to my mother. If he wanted to cling to the illusion of family loyalty while covering up theft and enabling destruction, that was his choice. I was done participating in his fantasy. The third message, however, was from another unknown number, and it made my blood run cold. Felicity's voice was different this time, clear and laughing, almost gleeful. "Hey, Jasmine, guess what? I found another car to use. One of my friends is letting me borrow hers so you can have your precious Honda back. What is left of it anyway? Hope you enjoy driving around in a car that nobody wants, just like you. Have a great life, sister." She hung up, still laughing. The message confirmed two things. First, that she was absolutely unrepentant, viewing the damage as a successful petty revenge. Second, that my ultimatum about the police was having zero effect on her entitlement. She had simply moved on to damaging someone else's property. That message hardened me completely. The emotional fight was over. I had achieved complete separation. Now the legal fight had to achieve absolute consequence. I called Officer Bradley the next morning, my voice devoid of emotion. "I want to proceed with pressing charges," I said. "Whatever the maximum is for what she did, I want to pursue it fully." "Are you certain?" Officer Bradley asked. "Once we move forward with formal charges, it becomes very difficult to undo. The prosecutor's office will take over, and it will be out of your hands." "I am certain," I repeated. "My sister left me a voicemail last night laughing about what she did. She does not think there will be any consequences. I want to prove her wrong." "All right. I will need you to come down to the station and give a formal statement to a detective. Can you make it tomorrow morning around 9 o'clock? I will be there." The decision was made. I was trading my damaged car and my damaged family for a chance at true, irreversible justice and, hopefully, freedom. The police station was everything my apartment had been: cold, institutional, and dominated by fluorescent lights that hummed a relentless, sterile buzz. I met Officer Bradley in the lobby, and she led me through a maze of gray hallways to a small, windowless interview room where Detective Hernandez was waiting. He was a patient man, silver at his temples, with a calm voice that made the task feel procedural rather than emotional, a necessity for the coming confrontation. This was the final hurdle. I had to give a formal statement that would justify the severity of the charges. The stakes were high if the prosecutors saw this as merely a family squabble and reduced the charges. Felicity would walk free again, confirming my greatest fear, that the system, just like my family, would prioritize convenience over my well-being. I told Detective Hernandez everything, starting with the discovery of the empty parking space and culminating with Felicity's gleeful, laughing voicemail. I articulated the facts not just of the theft, but of the pattern of negligence. Your sister has quite a history with vehicles, the detective noted, reviewing the documents. 4 totaled cars in 5 years. 3 of those were accidents she caused through reckless driving. 1 was the result of a DUI. She has had her license suspended twice, and I am honestly surprised she is even legally allowed to drive at this point. I felt a surge of grim validation. And my parents have enabled this behavior throughout, I added, emphasizing the deep root of the problem. They have paid for her lawyers every single time. They have covered her insurance premiums when they got too high. They have replaced her cars when she destroyed them, sometimes buying her newer and nicer vehicles than the ones she wrecked. They have never held her accountable for anything. But they have not done the same for you, he observed, his expression thoughtful. No, I replied, the bitter laugh surprising me with its intensity. I bought my first car at 19 with money I saved working 2 jobs while going to school full-time. They always said I did not need help because I was so capable and independent. But Felicity needed help because she was struggling. That was always the excuse. It was the first time I had ever fully laid out the family ledger for an outsider, and admitting the disparity felt like draining poison. It was facing the ghost of conditional love, the core wound, and accepting that the control I sought had only ever been a performance for people who were incapable of true support. After the statement was complete, Detective Hernandez laid out the legal path. Felicity would be officially charged with unauthorized use of a motor vehicle, a first-degree misdemeanor in Ohio. Given the damage to the car, there could be additional charges related to property destruction and vandalism. Will she go to jail? I asked, the question hanging heavy in the sterile air. It was the lowest point, the moment I had to confirm that I was willing to sacrifice the illusion of family peace entirely for justice. Unlikely for a first offense of this nature, he admitted, but she will probably face significant fines, mandatory probation, and a suspended license. And if she violates the terms of her probation or comes near your property again, then yes, jail becomes a very real possibility. I nodded. Part of me had hoped for something more severe, but another part just wanted this nightmare to be over. Then Detective Hernandez flipped through some papers on his desk. There is one more thing. We ran a background check on your sister as part of the investigation. Standard procedure. Did you know she has outstanding warrants in 2 other counties? I stared at him, genuinely shocked. This was the failure of my parents enabling laid bare. The chaos was so profound it had spread beyond their ability to contain it. What kind of warrants? Failure to appear on traffic citations, he explained. Relatively minor stuff on their own, but it means she is already in the system. When we locate her and bring her in on your charges, she will also have to answer for those outstanding warrants. I thought about Felicity's supreme arrogance in her final voicemail, her absolute confidence that she had gotten away with everything yet again. She had no idea what was coming for her. The net I had cast was drawing tighter than I, or she, could have imagined. What happens when you find her? I asked. We will take her into custody, process her on all the outstanding charges, and hold her until she can post bail or see a judge. Given the multiple jurisdictions involved, it could take a few days to sort everything out. Good, I said, and I meant it. My choice, which felt so difficult just yesterday, was now being amplified by Felicity's own past mistakes. The final piece of the climax puzzle fell into place 4 days later, while I was back at my desk calmly fielding a call about a late shipment of wire conduit. Gerald, the insurance adjuster, called with news. Good news, he said, his voice cheerful. Based on our comprehensive assessment, the damage to your vehicle exceeds 70% of its current market value. You qualify for a total loss payout. I set down my pen, my heart suddenly racing. What does that mean exactly in terms of numbers? It means we will pay you the full market value of your vehicle minus your deductible. Given that your car is only 3 months old and was in excellent condition prior to the theft, that should be very close to what you originally paid for it. You will receive a check for approximately $26,000. I did the mental calculation. I was getting back almost everything I had invested. I could use that money to buy a new car, something clean, untouched, with no spare key floating around the chaos of my family. I had fought for my property, and now, thanks to Felicity's excessive destruction, I was walking away financially whole. How do I proceed? I asked, a sense of finality washing over me. I was ready to sign over the title, relinquish the ruin, and close the ledger on this entire toxic episode. I had secured the financial win, and the legal consequences were now in motion. All that remained was the final, devastating moment in court. 2 weeks after I received the total loss payout paperwork, Felicity was located in Franklin County. She was pulled over for a routine traffic stop that quickly escalated when the officer ran her license and discovered the outstanding warrants I had triggered. She was taken into custody immediately, held without bail until her various legal matters could be sorted out across multiple jurisdictions. She spent 4 nights in the county jail. The news reached me through distant cousins, the kind of relatives who still believed they were obligated to maintain the toxic family network. The stories described a very different Felicity than the entitled star I was used to seeing. She was scared, diminished, finally experiencing life when no one was there to rescue her from her own poor choices. My mother called me from my father's phone, the one I had not yet blocked. I answered it, knowing this was the final, desperate plea. "Jasmine, please. Your sister is falling apart. She has court dates in 3 different counties now. She could lose her license permanently. Is that really what you want? Is that really the outcome you were hoping for?" "What I want," I said, my voice perfectly calm, "is for my sister to face the consequences of her actions. Something you and Dad should have enforced years ago when the problems first started. We did the best we could. Felicity has always been difficult. She has always needed more support than you. Felicity has always been enabled. There is a significant difference," I corrected. "And now that enabling has led her to a place where she is facing actual legal consequences for the first time in her life, maybe that will finally be the wake-up call she needs." My mother started crying, the theatrical sobs that had always worked on me when I was younger, the sounds that used to make me feel guilty for having feelings of my own. They did nothing now. "How can you be so cold? She is your sister. She is family. Does that mean nothing to you anymore? Family does not steal from each other, Mom. Family does not trash each other's property and then laugh about it on voicemail. Family does not enable destruction for decades and then blame the victim for finally standing up for themselves. You want to talk about what family means? Maybe you should start by examining what kind of family you and Dad have created." "That is a terrible thing to say. Your best was not good enough, and I am done pretending that it was." I hung up and immediately blocked my father's number too. The conversation was closed. The severance was complete. The court date came 3 months after the theft, on a cold November morning that perfectly matched my mood. I had not spoken to any of them since blocking the numbers. I had built a wall around my life, solid and strong. I needed to be there to witness the final consequence, to prove to the lingering, fearful part of myself that this was truly over. The Franklin County Courthouse was a large stone building that felt appropriately serious for the occasion. I found a seat in the gallery near the back, watching the room fill. My parents arrived about 10 minutes before Felicity's case was scheduled to be called. My mother was wearing a black dress, my father a suit. They looked drawn, smaller, visibly weighted by the crisis. They spotted me immediately. My mother's face cycled through surprise, a flicker of hope that my presence meant reconciliation, and then a final, grim resignation when I did not acknowledge her at all. My father put a restraining hand on her arm, and they sat on the opposite side of the gallery, as far from me as possible. Felicity was brought in by a bailiff, wearing an orange jumpsuit, her hair pulled back messily. She looked diminished, smaller than I remembered, like the past 3 months had drained the entitlement right out of her. She did not look in my direction initially. The judge, a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and a non-nonsense demeanor, read the charges aloud in a clear, deliberate voice: unauthorized use of a motor vehicle, failure to appear on 3 separate traffic citations, driving with a suspended license, destruction of property valued at over $1,000. The list was extensive. "How does the defendant plead?" the judge asked. Felicity's public defender whispered something in her ear. She glanced at my parents, then finally, briefly, her eyes met mine across the courtroom. I saw something flash in her expression, a mixture of anger and perhaps, finally, shame. "Guilty, Your Honor," she said quietly. The sentencing portion took about 20 minutes. The judge reviewed Felicity's driving record in exhaustive detail. She listened to the public defender argue for leniency, citing the recent divorce and a willingness to accept responsibility. Then the judge looked at Felicity directly. "Miss, I have reviewed your file extensively, and what I see is a consistent pattern of disregard for the law, for other people's property, and for the consequences of your actions. You have been given multiple chances to correct your behavior over the years, and you have squandered every single one of those opportunities. At some point, the court has to send a message that this kind of behavior will not be tolerated." My mother made a small, strangled sound from across the room. "I am sentencing you to 90 days in county jail with 60 days suspended pending successful completion of probation," the judge stated. "You will serve 30 days beginning immediately. You will be on supervised probation for 2 years. Your driver's license is hereby revoked indefinitely, and you may petition for reinstatement after 5 years. You are ordered to pay restitution to the victim in the amount of $3,000, and you are prohibited from contacting the victim in any way, directly or indirectly. Do you understand these terms?" Felicity nodded, her face pale. "Yes, Your Honor." The bailiff led Felicity away through a side door. She did not look back at my parents. She did not look at me. She just walked with her head down, like someone who had finally realized the world was not going to keep making exceptions for her. I sat in that courtroom and watched my sister disappear, and I felt something I had not expected: profound relief. The kind of deep, bone-level relief that comes when a weight you have been carrying for so long, you forgot it was there, finally lifts from your shoulders. The justice was final. The severance was absolute. The debt was paid not just to me, but to the legal system she had so casually ignored. My parents found me in the hallway outside the courtroom a few minutes later. I had been expecting them to approach, had steeled myself for the usual arsenal of guilt trips and emotional manipulation. But what I received instead was something I had never seen from either of them before: genuine, exhausted bewilderment. "Jasmine," my father said, his voice smaller and more uncertain than I had ever heard it. "How did we get here? How did things go so wrong?" I looked at him, really looked at him. This man who had snuck into my apartment complex in the middle of the night to give away my property. The man who had expected me to clean up messes I did not make and accept disrespect I did not deserve. "You got here by treating me like I did not matter and treating Felicity like she could do no wrong," I said. "You got here by never holding anyone accountable for anything. You got here by deciding that my boundaries were less important than keeping the peace." My mother opened her mouth to argue, but my father put his hand on her arm, and she closed it. "I think," he said slowly, "that we made a lot of mistakes. I do not know how to fix them." "I do not know either," I said honestly. The need to fix them was gone. "And honestly, I am not sure I want to try right now. Maybe someday, but not today." I walked away before either of them could respond. My new car was waiting in the parking garage, a silver Toyota Camry that I had bought with the insurance payout. No one in my family had ever sat in it or held a key to it. I got in, started the engine, and drove away from the courthouse without looking back. The weeks that followed were a study in transformation. Without the constant drama of my family draining my energy and demanding my attention, I found myself with time and emotional bandwidth I had not known I was missing. I started exercising again, reconnected with friends I had neglected for years, people who had drifted away while I was busy managing my family's chaos. I started living my life for myself, maybe for the first time ever. Denise, my coworker, noticed the change immediately. "You seem different lately," she said one afternoon. "Lighter somehow, like you finally put down something heavy you were carrying." "That is exactly what happened," I said. I stopped carrying weight that was not mine to carry. The $3,000 restitution check from Felicity arrived about 2 months after the trial. A money order that must have cost her everything she had saved. I deposited it into my savings account without ceremony. It was money that would go toward building my future instead of cleaning up someone else's past. A year passed. Felicity completed her 30 days in jail and was released into her probation period. According to the distant cousins, she was working at a fast food restaurant and living in a small apartment with a roommate, unable to drive and completely dependent on public transportation and the kindness of strangers. My parents had finally stopped enabling her, whether because they could not afford to anymore, or because the court order was undeniable. I had been promoted at Cresswell Electric, moved into a nicer apartment on the north side of Columbus, and started dating a man named Thomas who worked in healthcare administration. He was kind and patient and thoughtful, all the things my family had never been. When I told him about what had happened with Felicity in the car, he did not judge me or tell me I had overreacted. He just listened. And then he said, "It sounds like you finally chose yourself. That is one of the hardest things a person can do." The family I had grown up in was gone, but I was not mourning it. I was relieved to finally be free of it. Standing in my new apartment on a quiet Sunday morning, watching the Columbus skyline through windows that belonged to a life I had built entirely on my own terms, I finally understood what this whole experience had really been about. It was never just about a car. It was about respect and boundaries and the fundamental question of whether I was going to keep letting people treat me like my needs did not matter. For 29 years I had been the responsible one, the dependable one, the one who always absorbed the chaos. And what had it gotten me? An empty parking space and a family that blamed me for noticing I had been robbed. But not anymore. The car was just the catalyst, the final straw that broke a pattern I should have broken years earlier. And while I would never be grateful for what Felicity did, I could acknowledge that her theft had given me something valuable in return, the clarity to finally walk away from people who had never deserved my loyalty in the first place. As I watched the morning light spread across the city I called home, I realized that the revenge was complete. Not because Felicity had suffered, but because I had finally stopped waiting for permission to put myself first, and I had simply done it. That was the only revenge that ever really mattered.